Hello friends, my name is JJ. So as I am sure you have heard from all of your other favorite edutainment YouTube channels, the people of Japan got a new emperor the other day. And as I'm sure you have also heard, the Japanese have this whole tradition where every emperor gets his own era name, in this case the Reiwa era. Japanese society often asks you to record dates using this imperial era system, which I personally found to be a huge hassle when I lived in Japan about a decade ago. Whenever I would go to the dentist or whatever, they would ask me to write down my birth date using this system. So I had to carry this little card around with me because, if you can imagine this, I had a hard time remembering which random Japanese emperor's reign year I was born under. The answer is Showa 58, by the way. But anyway, because the Japanese imperial era name only changes once every few decades, the Japanese media always treats it as a really big deal when it does. There's this big ceremony where a guy with a calligraphy board dramatically unveils the new era name at a press conference, and all of the reporters ooh and ah. And because the media blasts the picture of the calligraphy board guys everywhere, they wind up becoming these sort of beloved Japanese meme characters. You can get like calligraphy sign guy stickers and people dress up as them for Halloween. You can even get their picture in your cappuccino or sushi. And then I was thinking if there are examples of this sort of thing in other cultures. Do other cultures mark the end of one era and the beginning of a new one with as much ceremony and tradition as the Japanese do with their emperors? The answer is yes, totally. And I think I have come up with a few good examples. Basically, we humans like organizing significant periods of time in relation to a few kinds of big events. I would say the most common are a big change in the calendar, the rise of some new political or religious leader, and the beginning or end of some big war. Calendar rituals are obviously the most common. We all like to make a big fuss when the calendar switches from one year to another at the end of December, or sometime between late January and early February if you live in Asia, or sometime between September and October if you're Jewish. But something that happens every year by definition isn't that special, but you know what is special? Round numbers. Are you guys old enough to remember when the calendar switched from 1999 to 2000? That was a big deal because it's not so often you see the calendar flip that dramatically. The media put a lot of effort into doing really big, over-the-top celebrations for the dawn of the new millennium, but I'm not really sure if any of them are really that well remembered today. Like, let me ask you this. Who dropped the ball in Times Square in New Year's Eve 1999? It was apparently Dr. Mary Ann Hopkins, a surgeon being honored for her work in war-ravaged countries as a volunteer with Doctors Without Borders. Don't see many Halloween costumes of her. But of course, part of the reason why the formal switchover didn't get that much attention was because it was so dramatically overshadowed by the biggest new millennium meme of all, the Y2K bug. For those who don't remember, back then, all of the important people were very worried that our primitive 90s era computers wouldn't be able to handle the complex task of going from dates that began with 19 to dates that began with 20. Some people got really paranoid about all this and would go on and on about how the so-called Y2K bug would make like planes fall out of the sky and like ATMs start spitting out money like in that one music video. But of course nothing actually happened, and now the Y2K bug is just a sort of kitschy symbol of the ignorance of that time. I remember I used to have this little doll of like a literal Y2K bug. This sort of thing was considered like the pinnacle of late 90s comedy. Oh look, here it is, 99 cents. How ironic. Now, the Japanese are hardly the only people that associate the passage of time with the reign of some royal person. One of the main novelties of having a royal family, in fact, is that it gives you a fun way to track your own march to the grave in relation to someone else's. When you live in a monarchy, a new king or queen can bring a lot of small changes to daily life. A new face on all of the coins, a new face on the stamps. If the gender of the monarch is changed, I guess you have to get used to saying either king or queen in reference to all of the government things that are called either the king or queen's this or that. And of course, there will be a new person sitting on the special chair whenever any of that stuff happens. I remember a Dutch friend of mine once telling me that the kings and queens of Holland are kind of like the Doctor Who doctors. in the sense that you're always very nostalgic and loyal to whoever was around when you were growing up. On that note, one of the great gruesome questions of our time is what is going to happen in Britain when Queen Elizabeth dies and Prince Charles comes to the throne. The current British Queen has been on the throne for an amazing 67 years, meaning there aren't that many people around who can even remember what it was like the last time Britain had a royal changeover. There was this really long article in The Guardian that went viral a few years ago because it purported to document in extremely vivid detail all of the wild rituals and traditions that were going to grip British society when the Queen finally passed away someday. A footman in mourning clothes will emerge from a door at Buckingham Palace, cross the dull pink gravel, and pin a black-edged notice to the gates. While he does this, the palace website will be transformed into a somber single page, showing the same text on a dark background. In all the other countries of Europe that have kings or queens, they have more or less abandoned the idea that a monarch should rule until they die. In these places, it is very common for the king or queen to just retire when they feel they've gotten too old to do the job. Sort of undermines the idea that monarchs are chosen by God, but whatever, let's see you do the same job for 30 years. Compared to Britain, these countries have transition ceremonies that are a lot more low-key. The king or queen will go on TV and make a big speech about why they've decided to quit, and then a few months later, their kid will be sworn in as the new monarch. I am sorry to disappoint, but no one actually does a coronation where they put a literal crown on your head anymore. If you are a Catholic, then the election of a new pope is a similarly big deal, because they too tend to hang around for a long time. And then when they die or resign, you have to start saying a few slightly different prayers at mass, and there's a brand new photo in the lobby, and the whole spiritual leadership of the church thing. The Vatican is always very good at sussing a lot of drama out of the big reveal of a new pope, with the white smoke and the big dramatic balcony appearance. Those balcony photos are always very beloved by Catholic grandmas, I find. But you know, there is a lot of symbolism associated with boring old political leaders too. Even in this grand age of democracy, I think a lot of us still mentally organize the decades the same way the ancient Romans or Egyptians did, which is to say in reference to who was ruling us. For example, I used to watch this YouTube channel that was all about 90s era video games. It was called Gaming in the Clinton Years. I think that sort of thing is pretty common when it comes to decades. You tend to associate them with a particular president or prime minister, just because a lot of democratic rulers these days tend to hold office for roughly 10 years. The association of leaders with eras makes elections very symbolically important as well. A lot of us will have very intense memories of this or that election night, just because we know it represents the start of a big new era. I often have a hard time sleeping on election nights because my mind is always sort of thinking about, okay, here's the beginning of a new 4 or maybe 8-year period. Where is your life going to be by the time the next election comes around? The beginning and end of wars is another age-old way of understanding eras. I still think it's kind of amazing that we in the West still speak of things as being either pre-war or post-war in relation to World War II, even 70 years later. That war ended in a very symbolically grand way, with a bunch of Japanese politicians signing a note of surrender on the deck of the USS Missouri on September 2nd, 1945. But we don't really have that kind of war anymore. Wars where one country fights the other until their government is forced to surrender. Modern wars are fought against vague things like terrorism or instability, and when you're fighting against an abstract concept, it's very difficult to ever have a clear moment of victory or defeat. The end of the Vietnam War is usually symbolized by this photo of a bunch of American embassy staff climbing into a helicopter on April 29th, 1975. That was when communist forces captured the capital of South Vietnam. It's such an iconic image, they even made a whole musical about it.
Okay, keep quiet, don't shout! The ambassador won't leave till everyone's up. The choppers on their way, have room for you all. They're climbing over the wall.
But that was obviously a very messy war that didn't really have a clean end. The day after this photo was taken, on April 30th, 1975, is when the Vietnamese considered the war to have ended from their perspective. But from an American perspective, the war had ended 2 years earlier with the removal of all US combat troops from the country, following the signing of a American-Vietnamese peace accord that no one remembers. Look, there's not even an iconic photo of it. Perhaps in an attempt to avoid a repeat of this, President George W. Bush attempted to provide a big splashy end to the war in Iraq on May 1st, 2003. It was what the New York Times called one of the most audacious moments of presidential theater in American history. This was, of course, the infamous Mission Accomplished episode, wherein President Bush, who had briefly served as a pilot, helped land a Viking jet on the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln, then gave a victory speech under a giant banner that said, "Mission Accomplished."
Major combat operations in Iraq have ended. In the Battle of Iraq, the United States and our allies have prevailed.
Now, in fairness to Bush, a lot of his people will say that the president never meant to imply that the entire mission of the Iraq War was accomplished, just the first phase in which the Americans overthrew Saddam Hussein. Good iconic photo came out of that, by the way. But that phase of the war is hardly what most people think about these days, given the rest of the war took 8.5 more years to finish. When the war officially did end, on December 15th, 2011, there was only a small ceremony in which some soldiers lowered the flag at the big US Army base in Baghdad. The problem is that the whole Mission Accomplished episode has become such a symbol of premature hubris and insensitivity that the whole idea of ever ending another war with a big symbolic gesture has now been kind of permanently discredited. So in that sense, I guess it did signal the end of an era after all. Can you think of any other gestures or rituals we do to signify the beginning or end of an important era? Does your country have some sort of symbol or meme or character that everyone associates with the beginning of a certain historical period? Let me know in the comments, and I will see you all next week.